Hey, this is Ryan Harper with eXp Realty, and today I'm here with Anthony Miser over at Land Title. How you doing today, Anthony?
Doing great. Thanks for having me on.
All right, yeah, thanks for taking a few minutes and just kind of helping me answer a few of these questions that we get a lot from some of our clients. And yeah, really appreciate your time and taking the effort.
You bet. So I'm based here in Boulder at the land title office. So you're a local title expert. If you ever have any weird questions that kind of come up, that's kind of what Ryan and I thought we'd talk about today. Just quick, easy things to look for when you're reviewing your title policy or you don't even know what title insurance is, right? Because that's
Yeah,
generally the first question we
absolutely.
get.
Yeah, everybody seems to get these notices and go, "What am I supposed to do with this?" We're like, "Oh, read it. It's fun." So yeah, let's start right there. What does what is the title insurance for, and what does it do?
Yeah, so the one thing about title insurance, everyone thinks insurance insures the future because, well, every insurance other than title insurance does, right? We insure the past. So we do a lot of lengthy research to make sure that you're getting what you think you're getting, that you're actually, getting a property that is exactly what you think you're buying, and there's no one clouding that title. So there's no judgments or liens against the property. Nobody can come after it and say it's theirs, even though you just purchased it. Or they can't come up to you and say, "Oh yeah, there was a new roof put on that last year, and you owe me $10,000 for a roof." Right? That becomes a problem. So that's why you pay us to make sure that it's free and clear. And then if somebody does come in and ask for money on that type of a product, then we have to pay them, right? So we insure you.
All right, that's great. So the title commitment, what sort of things should we be looking for when we're looking over that?
Well, number one, when you first look at it, just make sure that you, the seller, or whoever else is on the real estate documents, make sure those are the same people that are on title, right? If you're selling a property, I can't tell you how many times we'll get somewhere in the process and be like, "Oh, that person was deceased a while ago." Well, if they show up on title, we have to clear that up. So then we need other documentation. If mom or dad co-signed, or even like your uncle co-signed for you, that shows up a lot on title, and they're not in the contract. That becomes an issue also because they also have to be okay with you selling the property. So that one is probably first and foremost. Other than that, there's a spot in our title policy that's called exceptions, and most of the exceptions are super standard, right? There's easements that run through your backyard for Comcast and CenturyLink, and there's water lines, and anything that kind of you would need for your home, right? Those kind of easements or exceptions make sense. Somebody has to be able to access those type of things to maintain those, right? That is their right. So you give them permission when those are platted in the neighborhood, right? But if you actually see something on there that's really different, right? Or let's call it covenants and restrictions. Those kind of things are really common, right? We all agree that we're going to keep our houses in this palette color. You can't park stuff in the front lawn. Whatever it is that you do to keep your neighborhood really nice. Those are all things that everyone agrees on from the beginning. So those are pretty normal. But if you see stuff that's like the neighboring driveways encroaching on your property, right? That would show up on title. Or there's an easement because the neighbor actually has to drive through your property to get to theirs, right? You see that a lot.
Mhm.
Well, you have to agree on those things when you're purchasing it. And a lot of times people will be like, "Well, I don't want them driving through my property to access whatever the 40 acres behind me." Well, they may not have another way to access it, so they had to get an easement to do that. Or like trails, a lot of times we see that where a trail might run through your backyard. You can't just fence off your backyard and eliminate the trail, right? It becomes a real problem. So
Yes.
those kind of things we tell you about up front, right? We do a lot of research so you know what you're getting.
All right, that's awesome. Cool. So how's the buyer protected when we go through and get that title insurance form?
Well, the interesting part about Colorado is the seller is required to provide you that protection. So sellers generally pay for title insurance because they're the one providing the protection, but the policy actually protects the new buyers. So what that really means is that it just gives you peace of mind as the buyer that you're getting that free and clear title.
Awesome. That's great. So in the contract, we have off-record title objection and title objection. So, what is that off-record title objection and how does that come into play with us?
If you're paying cash, you want title insurance for this reason specifically, along with a few others. But if something comes up that never got recorded in the public record, it could still be valid, right? If somebody has a valid claim to that property and it's been sold down the line, or somebody can come up saying, yeah, this is actually my property, or I have a right to use this property, or I have a right to do these other things, right? Those easements, whatever. It just means that it was never a record, so nobody would have known it exists. So the title insurance company does all this research, mostly through public record. And if it shows up, then we can actually, take exception to it, which means we can tell you about it and we're not going to cover it. But we do cover things outside of that, right? If things don't show up on that policy, then we actually ensure the fact that we're going to either compensate you or whoever has some sort of, ownership of the property, or we literally have to buy the property back.
Okay.
Right? And you want that. You wouldn't want like somebody just coming to use your property if you didn't know about it, right?
Yeah, definitely. That's very important. That's awesome. All right. So what happens if I'm paying cash versus if I'm getting a loan? I know there's a little bit of difference there and what people should be looking out for.
There are. So the main way people purchase properties with a loan, right? So there's a couple of policies. The seller provides a policy, and then the buyer actually purchases a lender's policy. And the lender's policy, all it does is it basically states that that loan that they're taking out is going to be in first position, which means it's paid off before anyone else gets money if this property is sold. And the reason you want that is because if there was another loan in the past, or if you borrowed money from somebody else, they would go in order unless we guarantee that it gets to the first in line. So if it's a bank that's giving you a loan for your house, and your house is $500,000, you borrow $400,000, well, they want to make sure that no one else is getting paid before that big lump sum, because they're lending you the bulk of the money, right? So that's pretty common. The other thing about cash is it gives you a little bit more flexibility. Like the lender's not going to let you take exception to certain things. Let's just say the fence is in the wrong place and the neighbor has, garden beds alongside of the house. We could just take exception to that if you were paying cash for it and you don't really care, or, if something's in the wrong place, or if there's a shed on your neighbor's property or your neighbor's shed's on your property, right? The lender's not going to let you take exception to that. You have to go through a lot of hurdles to make that work, or change some other things. But if you're paying cash for it, you can basically take exception to any of those things all day long, and we just won't cover them, but you can easily go to closing. It's just a really streamlined, easy, smooth process if you're paying cash, because nobody's going to tell you how to spend your money, essentially, right?
Yeah, that's great. All right, awesome. So now in the Colorado contract, it's got, changes a little bit where, we can select special warranty deed or general warranty deed. And a lot of times buyers will get hung up on that if the seller comes back, or the seller will get hung up on that. Is that any difference actually with the title insurance and how that works?
Yeah, so the beauty is that I think this change from general warranty to special warranty is absolutely in the favor of the seller, but not necessarily a negative for the buyer, right? This is the first time we've actually seen some kind of common sense come to the table, because they've been doing this forever in builder and commercial.
Mm-hmm.
If you owned a property, here's the big difference. A general warranty deed means that you, the seller, are guaranteeing everything since the beginning of time. Right. Which that's crazy. Like, let's just say you own the property for 5 years, you're guaranteeing everything that ever happened from the time it was, a lot, essentially. Why would you do that? Like, that's on you at that point, right? So special warranty deed basically just changes that timeline to where you're only guaranteeing from the time you owned a property, or from whatever time is specified, which usually it's, the beginning of ownership. Or if it went through probate, a special warranty deed would be from the time of whenever probate started, right? Like the family wouldn't know anything about what happened at the property. But the beauty is the title insurance company is covering all this anyway. This is why it's always been kind of like a double negative, right? It's right. The title insurance company is always protecting you back to patent anyway. So there was no reason for the seller to take onus of that, right? You might as well leave it on the title company. They know how to handle it. They can cover it. It doesn't change anything going to the buyer.
All right. That's awesome. Well, thank you so much for taking the time and going over some of these common questions that we get a lot for title insurance and all that stuff. And of course, I always recommend Anthony and everybody over at Land Title. They do an amazing job for us. And so we're just really grateful to have them as part of our support.
Thank you, Ryan.
All right. Thanks.